Hi everyone, my name is Charlie and today I have my June TBR. In May, I talked about how making TBRs had actually been working for me this year, and we are currently on the 22nd of the month, and I have only read 3 of the books that I had written down on my TBR, and one of them wasn't even originally on the TBR. I just added it in as an 11th book. So out of 11, I've read 3. I'm not doing too well. I still have hopes that I'll get through a few more before the end of the month, but any that don't get read this month are getting carried over into June, which is why there are only 5 books on June's TBR. The first of which is my Elizabeth Taylor pick for the month, which is The Sleeping Beauty. I only have 2 more books by this author to read, one in June and the final in July. And this one I'm looking forward to because it says it is set in a seaside town, and that is something I enjoyed about a view of the harbour. So here we have Vinnie Tumulty is a quiet, sensible man. When he goes to stay at a seaside town, his task is to comfort Isabella, a bereaved friend, and he is prepared for a solemn few days of tears and consolation. But on the evening of his arrival, he looks out of the window at the sunset and catches sight of a beautiful woman walking by the seashore. Before the week is over, Vinnie has fallen in love, utterly, for the first time in his middle-aged life. Emily, though, is a sleeping beauty, her secluded life hiding bitter secrets from her past. Don't know how I feel about it because recently with Elizabeth Taylor I found that I haven't enjoyed some of them, but hopefully this is one that we will like. Next, I have a book that was recommended to me by a volunteer, and that is The Sisters Brothers by Patrick DeWitt. I owned this book when it was shortlisted for the Man Booker back in 2011 and I never read it. I got this and another one that was on the long list that year. I didn't like the format of those books, didn't like how large they were, so I just got rid of it and never read it. However, my volunteer told me that this is in her top 5 books she's ever read, and as she is also a person who recommended Barbara Pym to me, I'm going to give it a go. And the blurb of this one reads, "It is 1851, and a lust for gold has swept the American frontier. 2 brothers, the notorious Eli and Charlie sisters, are on the road to California, following the trail of an elusive prospector, Herman Kermit Warm. On this odyssey, Eli and his brothers cross paths with a remarkable cast of characters, losers, cheaters and ne'er-do-wells from all stripes of life. And Eli begins to question what he does for a living and who he does it for." I believe this one has been made into a film as well. I've always been incredibly fond of the cover and the way that they did this. I hope that I feel as strongly as my volunteer does about this book. Earlier this year, I said that I wanted to read more Anthony Quinn, the reason being that I have accumulated a few books by this author and they've gone unread. So I thought that I would go with London Burning. Now, I'm not too impressed with the font in this one, I have to say. I believe it's Palatino linotype and I'm used to something different from Anthony Quinn's books. But we will accept what we're given. London Burning is a novel about the end of the 1970s and the end of an era. Vicky Tress is a young policewoman on the rise who becomes involved in a corruption imbroglio with the CID. Hannah Strode is an ambitious reporter with a specialty for skewering the rich and powerful. Callum Conlon is a struggling Irish academic who falls in with the wrong people. And Freddie Sells is a hugely successful theatre impresario struck deep in a personal and political mire of his own making. These 4 characters, strangers at the start, happen to meet and affect the course of each other's lives profoundly. The story plots an unpredictable path through a capital choked by strikes and cowed by bomb warnings. It reverberates to the sound of alarm and protest, of police sirens, punk rock, street demos, of breaking glass and breaking hearts in dusty pubs. As the clock ticks down towards the general election, old alliances totter and the new broom of capitalist enterprise threatens to sweep all before it. London Burning concerns a nation divided against itself, a government trembling on the verge of collapse, a city fearful of what is to come, and a people bitterly suspicious of one another. In other words, it is also a novel about now. And naturally I turn to page 67 that says, "There's a tube strike on." I should say that I recently discovered that a volunteer who previously didn't like my recommendations has been reading Anthony Quinn, and I very much enjoyed the 2 that I've read by the author, and she's been enjoying him too, so I might read this, she might have read it, and we can chat about it. And then the next book I have on here is Whistling for the Elephants by Sandi Toksvig. This book got donated to the charity shop in the penultimate week of 2023, and I read the first line, and I knew that I was going to be taking this ban from buying books in 2024 until I'd read a lot of the ones from my shelves. So this was like the last book to go on my shelves that I hadn't read. Anyway, this from chapter 1. There are 2 basic types of creature in nature's kingdom. The first, like frogs and turtles, produce many offspring and simply hope that some will survive. The second, like elephants and people, produce 1 or 2 at long intervals and make great efforts to rear them. My mother belonged in a class of her own. She produced 2 at short intervals and made no effort to rear them whatsoever. Some people agonise over these things, but I thank God. A hint more attention from my own family and things might never have turned out the way they did. And so I didn't need to read the blurb, but I did, and found that Dorothy, aged 10, finds herself making her own way in Sassaspanic, New York in 1968. And she ends up going to this zoo on the outskirts of town, and I hoped that it was going to have that family dynamic that I had been so enamoured with by Kate Atkinson, and I was looking for something that would evoke that same emotion. So that's why I got that one, and I'm looking forward to that. As I say in all of them, I'm looking forward to all of these and hope that they turn out to become favourites. And the 5th book is one to go with one of my other goals for the year, which was to read more Anthony Trollope. I have got the entire collection of Anthony Trollope's novels and have done for nearly 4 years now. If I'd read one a month, then my goal to read them all would have been over by now, basically. But I didn't do that, and I still haven't read 10, and my aim for the year is to have read 10 books by Anthony Trollope, which means that I need to read another 3. I read one earlier this year, whose title I can't remember now, but it was about a haberdashery, and I don't know what the next one I read will be because there are so many from my shelves. I think I might do a Wheel of Names scenario and go with whichever book that it picks. I'm not going for a Palliser novel, and I'm not going for the last Chronicle of Barsetshire, just because I feel like I'll be intimidated by the length of them and not get them read. I have been debating reading An Eye for an Eye based on a review I saw by Katie of Books and Things, but I haven't yet decided whether that will be the case. I'm also very aware that there is going to come a time when I will read all of the books on my shelves and still have all of the Anthony Trollope books to read. I did not include those books in the audit I did on my shelves to see what I had unread, because it was never my aim to have read all of those books before I bought any new books. I did make a few caveats, and that was one of them. Similarly, I didn't add any of the Doctor Who books I've got to read to that because I have another project planned for that for hopefully next year. At the time of recording, books that I still have to read from my May TBR are Black Swan Green, English Pastoral, In the Fold, How We Disappeared, The Whalebone Theatre, The Passenger, and Stella Maris. And I believe that there is another book still unread somewhere, but I could not remember when I was looking at my shelves or my TBR which book that was. Otherwise, them's the books. If you've read any of these books and would recommend I prioritise one over another, then let me know in the comments. Similarly, let's open up a discussion about these books. Let me know what you thought. I hope that you have enjoyed this video, because until next time, that is all.